Whoa, hello there, David. Cranmer, Underdown. All right, it's a shakedown cruise, but we're all solid now. It's good to have you with me back here. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to Mystery Island Studio, where we are interviewing a Wednesday night duo guest of great renown now that Mr. David Cranmer Underdown is getting quite a reputation for putting together, connecting the dots in our amazing corporate and business and government world. So let's delve forward with David Cranmer Underdown tonight. How are you, David?
I'm doing well, thanks, John. I'm on the road today, as you can see, in a little bit different location. So it's been a good couple days driving from Detroit to where I'm in Taunton, Massachusetts right now.
Well, I believe you're going to have to go through Nantucket, right?
That's the final destination. Yeah.
You're going to Nantucket, so that means you must have a lyric for me. I mean, a limerick.
I should. I don't. I'm not a great limerick person, but I know I know Nantucket has the many famous on it.
It's kind of hard not to rhyme something with Nantucket.
Right. Like a natural. Was it a natural rhyme?
Yeah, there was a man from Nantucket who was going to vote, but he just said go.
Right.
Yeah. All right. My favorite limerick, if I may, was composed by a wonderful guitar player, Richie Schumann, my good buddy, and he probably composed this 30 or 40 years ago, but it's always stuck with me in my mind. I think it's just absolutely perfect. And he composed it on the occasion of a limerick contest by WGMS Radio in Washington, D.C., the classical station, for Beethoven's birthday. No, Bach's birthday. And there was a limerick contest. And so he sent in his limerick. I don't think he won, but if it was me, I would have given him the prize. And the limerick goes like this. There once was a man from Madras whose balls were both made out of brass. When he clanged them together, one played Stormy Weather and the other Bach's B minor Mass. And for a limerick contest that you had to say Bach in, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. I don't know. Maybe not everybody thinks it's the greatest piece of literature on the East Coast, but I think it was pretty darn good.
Well, I feel like limericks are supposed to be fun, so I don't know. I don't know who the judges were for that contest.
I don't know if they had the balls to even recite it on the air back then. Yeah. Well, Sergeant Stadenko's here, so we can say whatever we want to because he's not gonna bust us. He's a good sergeant. Oh, and Kate is here, and Corky is here. Philo is here. Oh boy, Philo sounds like a philosopher. Philo. No, you're a trucket from Nantucket. Okay. Okay, very good. Well, you are just busy as can be doing your research. I know you're traveling right now, but you've been once again very active putting up your Twitter stuff. And am I going to one day get a book from you somehow? Are you going to put all this stuff together
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's sort of the end goal. I never feel like I've accumulated enough to write something, but I don't know. The more I go, the more I feel like it. I always just say it's a writer's notes and just trying to link things together. But and it is historically, to me, it's like a puzzle and putting it together. And I feel like it's never looks good enough. So I'm always trying to find new angles and things. But I do need to put together a book someday. There are a lot of people that have encouraged me, and I'm need to get down and do it someday.
Hello, Bo. How's Bo doing tonight?
Bo is doing great. He's been a very calm passenger in the van, so it's been nice to have him come along. So it's been, it's wonderful to be able to travel with my mom, and the rest of my family is going to fly. So we'll pick them up, but he gets to be a part of the trip, which is wonderful.
Does he get to drive?
He doesn't drive, but he sits in the front a lot. I mean, he comes up and, goes in the back and, sits on my mom's lap, and he's very sweet. He's a great companion. So he's been, very happy to have him come along.
All right. And yeah, we have a couple of little ones now traveling with dog to the beach. That's wonderful. I guess you have to keep them on the leash on the beach there, don't you?
Yeah, and they also had the shark warning, so I don't want to have any Jaws situation. I feel like Jaws was on Cape Cod somewhere, so
yeah,
repeat of that.
No, don't know. Oh, well, I'm a little jealous. A week at the beach would be just the thing right now, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm glad for you. And I don't know, man. You have so many things that you're writing about, from the medieval times to the Revolution to the latest things about I don't even want to say COVID, but COVID, and but I almost, maybe I'll even just look at your Twitter and say, let's delve into this or that subject that you've been talking about lately. Let me see what comes up first under David.
Well, one of the things that, when people will send me direct messages or whatever, they're always curious about it. And the thing that I feel like that helps me a lot is that I do always try to include sort of the personal connections to a lot of the things. And I know it sounds weird going back in time that far and things like that, but I don't know if we had just going through the different characters and that I'd gone to school with, who my parents, their friends and peers, and like I was saying before the show, they were talking about the Heinrich Muller, who is somebody that I don't know a lot about Heinrich Muller, but there's I've talked about before my sort of suspicions that my great grandfather on my father's side, the one from Steubenville, Ohio, that was the University of Michigan doctor, may have known Robert Swan Muller the first, who was a ears, nose, and throat doctor in Pittsburgh, which is very close to Steubenville, and he was also a University of Michigan student. And then the just recently learning that the Herman Muller, who was the Nobel Prize winning genealogist. He was somebody that was doing the radiation with fruit flies, won the Nobel Prize, and he was in his late career, he was at Indiana University. So there's a lot of interesting Mullers that are in sort of in both sides of my family, that I'm trying to explore that, because from what was being discussed on the Reality OS show yesterday, they were talking about Muller's role with Harry Truman, supposedly presenting artwork from Europe, priceless art, and then his relationship with the Manhattan Project. And they talked about your father, actually, because there was suspicion that Muller went to Russia right after World War II and sort of helped the Russians get their nuclear program sort of caught up to the American program, so that there could be this balance of power between the Americans and the Russians as far as the Cold War, and having a credible threat with the Russian nuclear program, which apparently was behind the American program, during World War II.
Are you familiar with the Pugwash conferences?
No, I'm not familiar with them.
Well, your man Herman Muller was one of the attendees to the first one, along with my candidate for the evilest man of the 20th century, Mr. Bertrand Russell.
Okay.
And this Pugwash conference is something we need to bring into our onto our radar screen. It still exists, but the first one was very, very important because it was the big scientific convocation of all the big, the smart guys, and they all decided that we had to have a world free of nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. And that has driven, in a very kind of a perverse and opposite way, our foreign policy. Because this is something that takes a long time. It took me a long time to realize what's going on here with Bertrand Russell. But remember who he works for. He's with the dark side of the English oligarchy, with the anything goes free trade policies that enriched all of those oligarchs and elites, and he's really treats mankind as just a bunch of flesh. And unless we're useful or make ourselves somehow entertaining to these elites, we don't have any value. And that is the dark side of philosophy right now in this world. And it's driving a lot of things that are going on right now. But what my concern is that people go around saying, oh my God, nuclear war, we can't have a nuclear war. And while all of this is like, virtue signaling to me, that's a great phrase. I don't know who invented it, but virtue signaling is such a useful little phrase. I am against nuclear war. No nukes, no nukes. Remember all this? You don't remember, but the signs in the 60s, no nukes. While we're out there marching against nukes, we're napalming Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that if all you're going to protest against is, this horrible world-ending nuclear nightmare, then you are being spun. You're taking the bait. You're not being an anti-war person if all you want to do is worry about nuclear war like a chicken with his head cut off. Oh my God, nuclear war, nuclear war. No, war. That's what we got to stop. War at all, any kind of war. There's no good war, none. And this distraction of nuclear war is a big psyop that has been very, very profitable for a lot of very, very evil-minded human beings,
Yeah.
I think. So Pugwash Conference, that's a good place to try to tie in Herman Muller with the work we're doing.
Well, I watched an old show that Mark Kulak had done on Herman Muller and his radium book that he was mentioned in quite a bit, and he did say that he was a Columbia student, and that he was in a literary club with either Simon Pellenbar or with Alexander Sachs. One of those two. It was either Bill Barr's grandfather or his great uncle was in this small literary club at Columbia University. And he was also somebody that was brought into the United States at Rice University in Houston by Julian Huxley. So he does have these ties, not just into the Manhattan Project, but also into these literary circles that you alluded to. So I do think there is quite a bit there. And the other thing that is interesting to me is that Herman Muller, a different Herman Muller, was the chancellor of the Weimar Republic during their collapse, and he was one of the political leaders of Germany that was negotiating the Dawes and the Young plans, which were the Versailles Treaty reparation programs. So all those things are very interesting. And then of course they talked about Goring, Hermann Goring, being one of these Nazi leaders that was dealing in the artwork, and how at Nuremberg he had sort of been duped by the forgers. This was like a movie that Peter Duke was alluding to called The F is for Fake. It was a H.G. Wells film, I believe. But that was something that was interesting to me also, because Goring, of course, was somebody that had ties to Charles Lindbergh. And that's one of the things I always try to remember, is that Lindbergh had a lot of Detroit ties. His mom was a teacher at a high school in Detroit, Cass Tech, which was like a great high school in Detroit. And then also after the Lindbergh baby was taken, he moved to Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and was doing consulting work with Ford, and with General Motors, which had Avco, the aviation company, was owned by GM, and he was consulting them on aviation. So that's something that's also really interesting to me as well, that these German and American aviation programs, and then sort of how that went into aerospace and rocketry as well.
Poets. I was thinking about poets today. Robert Oppenheimer is another example of one of these, egghead scientists that finds a lot of truth and solace in poetry, and these people, these scientists are, I think, crying out for some kind of understanding of life, but they're foreclosed from a religious understanding of life, because they've just been steered away from that and into a kind of empirical, a British empiricist view, of which, that's just Malthus and all the rest of them saying, if you can't put a value on it, if you can't taste it, smell it, feel it, toss it, sell it, then it's nothing. There's no value to ethical principles, or to aesthetic things, or tradition, or any of that stuff. You just forget about it. Romantic, sentimentality. That is exactly what George F. Kennan called for in 1946 in his thing that predates Henry Kissinger, who was still just learning the ropes of how to be an elitist. But Kennan, he came from Kuhn Loeb, and he was an elitist already. And he was the one that started off what basically could be in SSM 200, that when we look into the world now, you see that we have got maybe 6% of the people, but 60% of the wealth. And the rest of the world is not going to be happy with that. And as we move forward into the future, we must not be sentimental. He actually said that we must not be romantic or sentimental. We must act in our own interest, or we will lose it all. And that philosophy is exactly what Henry Kissinger has pursued, and that's what is in SSM 200, and it's the basis of our GMO policy and all of the horrific things that have been done to patent and take over our food production in such a way that nature is no longer a factor, and everything is going to come from corporate sources. That attitude is now what's flowering, and that's what's killing us. That's what's tearing us apart. Is that in what philosophers call British empiricism, and it is brutal and ruthless empiricism. And that's just the way it is. If if you're in the way, then you're going to be pushed aside. And if you're no longer worth anything, then it does lead to the Nazi solutions. It really does. They're not going to look at Britain, where the National Health Service is not getting sufficient support. You know, say the first thing is, you know, they nationalize the health service, then they crush, you know, the health service, and that crushes the health of the people. Nationalizing our health service or turning it into a worldwide thing is a big project of a lot of these creepy you know, societies, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, and all of that stuff, trying to turn it all into one big, you know, one size fits all health system. And it's just really another aspect of that philosophical attitude towards life, which supports the British and the whole idea of empire going back long before the British Empire, the earlier empires. The imperial way of life is supported by things like inflation, where they can just, instead of taxing us, they just decrease the value of our money and to their benefit. And that's certainly been the story of the past 2 years anyway.
Yeah.
This inflation's been horrible. But you see what I'm saying is that if we were really going to value human life, if we were really, you know, running a government of, by, and for the people, then we wouldn't be worrying about a whole lot of things except for make sure that everybody's got clean water, clean place to stay, you know, clean air, and access to learning, access to how to become a full, you know, have a full, useful, and productive and happy life. You know, pursuit of happiness means access to things that make you happy. You can't pursue happiness if you're a serf. But that's the other thing. They're trying to reverse engineer us from these fairly smart, you know, high school educated people that can do basic math and write a decent sentence, even back, you know, to the point where we have to communicate with diagrams and icons. You know, all these icons are there to draw us away from the custom of actually using words to communicate. They're pulling us back into a state of servile. Um, uh, I just I think that they think we're going to be happy by not knowing anything. You know, like the happy cow that sits on the hill and eats his grass and he's having a wonderful day. He doesn't know that he's going to go to the slaughterhouse tomorrow, so he's happy.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know that you're going to go to the slaughterhouse tomorrow or go to the FEMA camp next week, or you don't. But so you should just be happy, and that kind of, they really want us to go there. That's what Klaus Schwab is talking about when he says you'll own nothing, you will have no privacy, and you'll be happy. Say no. I'll be happy when I see a great big key lime pie in Klaus Schwab's face. That's the only thing I can think would make me happy after listening to that insane man. And speaking of ranting, I've just been ranting. Shut up, John.
Well, I mean, you had a great show with Harley yesterday, and you talked. You mentioned Herman Kahn, who again is somebody that I think is a really key person that was creating these policies. I do agree that I think that a lot of the demoralization that I feel like people are, you know, faced with now, as far as you know, just like the disappointment of, like, you know, like you said, like services, like education, or just like the infrastructure of roads and you know, power and things like that, clean water, clean food. You know, I do think it, you know, I remember you know, Fletcher Prouty talking about how the East India Company had, you know, Thomas Malthus was their employee, and he did basically tried to train people to lose their, you know, empathy for when bad things happen to people that, you know, don't live around you. And if you're a, you know, colonizer, and you know, the population of people in the place that you're going, and you want to, you know, set up a new colony there, and the people that were there before, bad things happened to them. Well, that's, that's how you you live with that idea that that's, just that they're, they just take away that just like we've talked about, put them into different classes where some people are more like livestock basically. And it's those things are all really hard concepts for me to accept, that someone like a World Economic Forum, that would sort of be what their drive is. But that was another thing that I was really interested that you were talking about with Harley was, and maybe this show before, the the uh the history of Klaus Schwab and his family, and the Escher Weiss and Salzer, which was the power company in Switzerland. All those things are really interesting backgrounds. And um, it, I mean, I feel like the group from the charrette, we were also really getting into the World Health Organization, and how they were creating these R&D, WHO R&D blueprints, where they were talking about the future outbreaks and which diseases we needed to prepare for. And how even something like that's just so suspicious. I feel like you really can't even get into the talking about the people that were on on their own literature, that were organizing these discussions, and talking about Herman Kahn, and his role with the Rand Corporation, the mutually assured destruction program that we seem to have adopted for my whole lifetime. And how how nuclear weapons tie into that, and like you said before, focusing in on just that aspect, when there are so many other weapons of mass destruction that are they're all terrible. So it's not like there's one, you get rid of one, and you need to get rid of all of them.
Yeah, well, I am very, very suspicious of the whole Manhattan Project, as you might know, and I think that it was not merely just about developing a nuclear weapon. I think it was generally that these guys are studying how possibly to kill off a whole lot of people at once in any way, because this goes back to the eugenicists, and the attitude of these people that made the first gas weapons, and James B. Conant of Harvard, who specialized in making mustard gas and other chemical weapons for World War One. They knew, that their job was to make something that could kill the most people as fast as possible on the battlefield. And if they could do that in wartime, then how do you stop doing it just because it's peace? Now it's peace, and you think, well, I've got to develop the next one. I've got to develop the one that the other guy hasn't got yet, or I've just learned that the other guy is developing the newest one, the new XXX number 17 nerve gas, and I've got only number 16. So I'm going to have to, get my scientists together and come up with number 17. And then we're going to make number 18 so that we're ahead of them. And that kind of a chemical arms race, I think probably has been going on. And it's not just the idea of killing a whole lot of people being a bad thing. In wartime, it's a good thing. It really is. If you're being attacked by, Khan from the Star Trek series, the evilest evil, then killing all of his stormtroopers is a good thing. So having a weapon that can do that, and when you're under threat, is one thing. But how do you stop it? And it certainly has not been stopped in biological context. I wanted to just make reference, because I am heading to Ireland this August, to The Great Hunger by Cecil Woodham Smith, which actually is the first book that really documents the attitude that you just described of a Lord Shelburne in London, uh, a that would teach themselves to have no sympathy for these peasants that are dying, literally falling dead on the side of the roads on the roadside, or working themselves to death in the workhouse, in the local workhouse. And I'll be visiting the famine grave at Ennistimon, where my family is from, and doing a book launch there in August, August the 10th, I believe, and 11th. And so, no, it's yeah, I never thought that anybody would be so evil. I didn't think anybody could be, especially not the British. I mean, come on, the British, they write poetry, right? I
Mhm.
mean, John Donne, I mean, Shakespeare, come on, they would not, starve people to death cruelly, coldly, and with no sympathy. Well, some of them would, and some of them did, and that, they're sitting there right in the same place where the people that make the financial decisions, the ones that decided, we're just going to take all the food from Ireland and use it to feed our kids, and we can do that because we've got the British Army, and they don't, because they're just peasants, so we'll just take it. And it's unbelievable that people could be that cruel, but they are that cruel, and they don't think of themselves as cruel either. This is what I've been trying to figure out for years now, is how do you justify that attitude? And I really do think that a lot of it comes from uh, the wars between the Holy Roman Empire and the Pope and the Reformation, and especially from the Jesuits that will apply these um, the ends justify the means arguments.
Yeah.
And that's how you get a health alteration committee. That's how you get a Richard Bissell proudly calling himself a man-eating shark. And that's how you get, somebody who really could have made a contribution, and very intelligent, and somebody that really just really wanted to help. Uh, and then you, like my dad, and you get rid of him because, well, he knows too much, or he's, he he really did know too much. Now that we know what he did to Armitage's dope deals in Thailand,
Yeah.
it's like I swear that I'm so glad I lived long enough to meet Douglas Valentine and to learn that story about TDY. It's unbelievable, but it's true. He
Yeah.
really did run that mission. Yeah.
Well, that was something that they were talking about yesterday, how it is just incredible that he was just right in the eye of the storm for all of the Cold War. And, it's very, yeah, it's sad. And it is, sad that sort of the same characters, even though it seems like that there's been so many missteps and things that have been exposed that it just doesn't ever seem to really catch on enough to really slow it down. And you just look at like where we are now, and it's scary. It's scary that someone like a Richard Armitage is who'd worked so closely with Cofer Black in the 90s and 2000s. And these guys are still in very top positions, and I don't feel like most people know who they are or what their histories are. And that's those are the types of things that when I am posting things on Twitter is trying to just educate people. These are real characters, and this is who they've worked for, and this is what they're doing now, and who they're partnered with now. And just hope that it does catch on. I mean, I don't have any um feedback that it is being talked about. It's certainly not in like mainstream news or even like the alternative media, but I for me it's very interesting trying to learn who the characters are. I mean, I go back even to the, Fletcher Prouty's interviews. He talks about the secret team, and he talks about, the names of the people that you hear are not really the key ones, and the real key characters. We will never say who they are. And that's something that, almost like the way Eustace Mullins was so driven to learn, which bankers were the shareholders of the Federal Reserve Bank. What are the names of those banks? Who are the men that were running those banks? And that's kind of what I try to like to do also, is learn, who are the secret team players. And the thing where we get, I think, a lot of problem is that people just get really locked into that certain characters are a certain way, and that they can't accept that they could have a double-hatted role, or a disinformation or a deceptive role. So those are the types of things I try to do. But as far as like Richard Armitage, I mean, we talked about before how his grandson is on the Young Sheldon show, which is like a spin-off of that. I never watched any of these shows, but it was the Big Bang Theory, which was apparently a big popular show. And they bring out his grandson, and again, it's like, I just look at that, I'm like, well, they're just trying to soften his image as a guy that's the grandfather of this charming kid. And there's not much most people don't look beyond that.
Sheldon?
The show is called Young Sheldon, and it's like basically a spin-off of like the Big Bang Theory is about these I don't know if they're like, I think they're scientists or rocket scientists or something, and they all live in the same apartment. And I think the story is based on one of the characters as a young kid, and Richard Armitage's son plays the role of that Sheldon character. And I know you've talked about your oh no, Sheldon's different from Selden. I was thinking of your Asimov characters.
Yeah, no, but I was thinking of Sheldon as in Prescott Sheldon Bush. Is it that spelling?
It's Sheldon, I believe.
Yeah, that's Prescott Sheldon Bush, and also Sheldon Whitehouse, the current senator from Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Sheldon reference. That's an old name of New England, and quite connected with the Rockefellers way back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, well, I had so much I was going to say, but then I lost it. What was I going to say? Oh gosh.
Is it secret team people?
I did want to say that when Fletcher Prouty says we'll never know who they really were, but I think H.P. Albarelli's recent book, the one that I read a number of excerpts from about a month ago, called A Coup in Dallas, when he brings in the characters from the French Cajul and the OAS and the people connected to who's the one that built the big art gallery in Dallas that's connected with Schlumberger and
yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like Dim Manuel or something.
yeah. And anyway, all of these people, their role, I think, is not really part of what Fletcher Prouty was aware of, or he didn't talk about it unless I missed something. So I think this is a new aspect. But I'm always shocked when I have been looking at this stuff for 5-6 years, and then something hits me that I never thought of before. And apparently it's not that new an idea, but the idea that Richard Nixon was in fact blackmailing Allen Dulles, because when he was with the Office of Naval Intelligence, had picked up had some evidence that he could blackmail Dulles with about Dulles dealing in stolen Nazi assets, gold or art or something.
Right.
And this was reported by John Loftus, who has written a number of important books about the era. And also now I see there's a person who I have to study named John Newman, who has now written 3 books on the JFK assassination. So I can't say I'm up to speed right now. I feel like there's still a lot of stuff that I have to study. But again, when you put yourself in my dad's position, having been close to the top of the FBI, working on all kinds of things from Russian and other sources for Hoover, and then put him in the Pentagon, where he's working for the admirals and the generals, and he's in a man. He really is in the catbird seat,
Yeah.
and everything that happens. And the real, I think, the tragedy to me is that it was doomed from the start. The job that he was given, because he was given sole and exclusive possession of all the covert action files from all the services and all the intelligence agencies that existed in the government as of 1962, according to JFK's order. So this went, not only, it didn't just go to Saxa generally, it went to Tom O'Loughlin personally.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to have custody of those files puts him in the line of fire from all kinds of different angles, from the Russians to the CIA to you name it. There's going to want to get hold of those files. What's in those files? What do they have on me? You know, well, who's in there that I learn whether somebody is a mole or not just by looking at these files. I don't know much about it except for when I see that in his records, it's just chilling now knowing that we have vicious, murdering people out there like Bissell and Dulles, and that they would do things to get hold of those files, and I'm quite sure they did.
Yeah. Well, one thing too with Dulles and Nixon is that I think that for whatever reason, I feel like people forget that Nixon was vice president for the 8 years under Eisenhower, and he was, I think it was called Operation 40, which was one of the executive action groups that I think Fletcher Prouty may have been part of. Also, he called them the mechanics, but that was supposedly run by Richard Nixon. He was, as the vice president, he was running it. But I've also read that Dulles was in charge of that Operation 40 group, which again has had, Kissinger has been mentioned as somebody as a leader of that as well. And then, of course, always thinking back to the 40s when Kissinger was the translator for Allen Dulles. And so again, it was like, well, he was young, but what was his role working with him? And so it does get interesting thinking about the, Nixon, I mentioned before that if you watch that, there's been a lot said that Prescott Bush was somebody that really placed Nixon, and they even said that they, placed an ad in the paper for a crooked politician, and that Nixon answered the call, and all those backstories. But I don't know. I mean, he was the vice president, and there's, so he would be definitely, that would put him on the National Security Council, right? It's president, the vice president, the Department of Defense, and the Secretary of Defense, and then the DIA. I think were those the 4 people that were on the.
I don't think DIA, but I don't remember. I'm not sure.
But yeah, so I don't know. So there's a lot of again, even the. I like last week I was posting about George Smathers and his role, because he was like a lifelong friend of Kay Graham's husband, Philip Graham, who also, passed away of a suicide right before JFK, and how he was, running the Washington Post, and of course with her father's role at the World Bank, and with the Federal Reserve and, being this powerhouse banker. How he was, the Graham family was very close with the Smathers, and then JFK was very close with them also. They said that George Smathers was the, when he married Jackie Kennedy, that he spoke at the, he was one of the speakers at their engagement party or whatever. So, and then of course he's in there with Smathers is in there with Nixon and Rebozo, apparently doing banking for Resorts International and the Mary Carter Paints Group, which supposedly had Dulles and in on that as well. So that all those things are it's hard. It is hard to put it all together, but what Prouty said was that I think he said what he said was that we'll never say who they are. I think he obviously knew a lot as far as the operations end, and the he had such a big role, I think, in setting up the global supply chain as far as the aviation and the civil air transport. I think he was really a key player in that, and I think his background before that was in logistics of railroads as well, and he had a big role in the Trans-Iranian Railroad, which they said was one of the key strategic assets of World War II, was the railway between Asia and Europe. So, thinking about those characters, and then of course how your dad would fit in, it is something that is really interesting to put it together, because there was, as we've talked about, there was fighting between the creation of the CIA and the FBI and the naval intelligence, and the Army had its own intelligence, and the Air Force was a new division, and sort of how those different groups interacted. I mean, I think it's hard to put it together, but I feel like the only way you can do it is to learn, who the people are, who the leaders are, who created the agencies, and just try to deconstruct it that way.
Yeah, it seems like a never-ending task, but they could tell it to us anytime they want to. They could reveal it. I wanted to just get back to your reference to the Big Bang Theory, believe it or not, for a moment.
Yeah.
Because I learned something this week about the Big Bang Theory, the actual scientific theory that, the universe all used to be in a little bitty, tinier than a head of a pin. And one day it exploded, and here we are. And that's a really nice, neat theory. It's called the Big Bang Theory. Where did it come from? Well, I never thought of that, but here's something I want people to consider. It comes from a Jesuit. When Edwin Hubble did his in the 19 teens, when he was taking photographs of the distant universe by time exposure photographs, and he was able to gather enough light to show that there was billions and billions of stars and galaxies out there, just beyond our ability to comprehend. But the photographs told it, and he noted, from what they call the redshift, that certain ones are moving this way away from us, and certain ones are moving that way away from us, but that everything was moving away from us. And from that, he apparently told this to a friend who was a Jesuit, and the Jesuit told it to the Pope, who I think was one of the Piuses, somebody that was in with the Jesuits. Might have been Pius the 13th or so. Well, no, I mean the 11th or so. But anyway, this Pope was delighted, because what this provides is a way to explain the universe using only secular, in other words, empirical things, without a God, without spirituality. It gives you a this Big Bang theory that the universe didn't start, with Genesis and God saying, "Let there be light," or any of that stuff. It all came from this one little germ, and science can prove it. This is part of the how we can understand how we got drawn away from God, away from spirituality, away from the contact that we should be able to have with something greater than ourselves, and steering it toward this very cold and rational universe that comes from some insignificant explosion 150 billion years ago. It had nothing to do with spirituality. Now, the fact that the Jesuits took that up tells me, that's very consistent with what I think of the Jesuits as using a uh, an evil means to achieve what they would think would be to be a good end. And in this case, they're using that to take people away from their personal relationships with God and into a technological relationship with the powers that be in this earth. And uh, maybe in their minds, for the greater glory of God eventually, because by the time they're done shaping us and fashioning us into these better humans, they think they're going to please God by making humanity into something, you know, uh, I guess the word is sustainable. Um, we want sustainable humans for our God, and so we're going to compress evolution into a very short time by making everybody unaware of God, unaware of their ability uh, to pray, to meditate, to gain something out of life that's not part of the British empirical system. Um, I'm trying to say a whole lot here in a short period of time, but this to me is big, that you can see the hand of the Jesuits in trying to shape our society in a way in which just a simple human relationship with God is not honored anymore. And what you really are honored now is, science, because everything started with the Big Bang, and, forget about Genesis. Um, so I just wanted to share all that because I get these insights, and if I don't share them, then I might forget about it. And I think that one was worth sharing. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, I, like I said, I've always, I went to BC, so I, had a Jesuit school, and, I was never, I never got the sense of that, that things were, you know, anything other than, that there's like nice teachers and nice families. So again, it's just like you don't um, see it. Again, and it's like it's just hard to believe that that you can that we kind of are in this position we're in right now, because it just doesn't seem like you know I don't know. I mean, you sent me that book, and I read quite a bit of it about the history of the Jesuits, and it was very very interesting. And of course, I'm always sensitive to the other kind of groups that people like to blame, as far as like coming up with these like long-term plans. And it's all very interesting to me, as far as trying to learn the history to make sense of it, because it does we are in a situation where the I feel like you can't have shows that even like just want to apply like the scientific method, because we've elevated a class of experts that are that are apparently know too much, or whether they have a security clearance. Mark Kulak talks about that quite a bit, as far as the using the danger of science and making it classified where it's too dangerous for the average person to know about. That's kind of where we are, and how we got there. It's crazy. I don't know. I mean, it's part of what try to figure out, but yeah, I'm not an expert in the Big Bang Theory, and I'm certainly not an expert in Genesis. So I feel like I'm not the best person to comment on those kind of big, very big picture ideas.
Well, fair enough, and it's not necessary that you comment on it, but it just to me, I've all of the observations I make, I know that there's forces behind the scenes that are manipulating us and have plans, whether they're 100-year plans or whatever. But the idea that all of this insanity that we're living through right now has not been the result of well-laid plans. I can't accept it. I think we are in right now in the throes of people's well-laid plans of playing out, and hopefully they won't play out in too horrible a way. But if we can expose them before the bad stuff hits, then I think there's enough goodness in the world that we can survive it and turn things around. At least that's what I think McDuff's mission is to straighten things out, get this fighting over with, and let's get back to the real principles that we want to be America and a good, happy, just world to live in. So I bet you can't argue with that, can you?
I can't argue with. I mean, that's kind of. I mean, I feel like I've been struggled with it, and Bo struggles with it too. I mean, because
Bo's struggling with something else too right now. I think he's got an idea.
he's yeah. I mean, that's what makes it confusing is that most the characters that it doesn't seem possible that they would be contribute to something like that, because I don't know. I mean, the ideas that that we sort of have for America, and the idea of the equal rights, and the people getting a chance to succeed, and I don't know, all that stuff. I mean, it's hard to argue with that. So to be in a position where it's it seems like we're going in the wrong direction is it's we I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I just try to do the best I can, and trying to understand the history and point out different hypocrisies of different things. But it's yeah, I hope that I'm very I hope that there is a good result with it, and that I felt like you and Harley had a positive conversation about what they're trying to do as far as organizing people, and dealing with the financial aspect, which is something that of course I'm always very interested in. And really I've dealt with that. When I first met you, that was kind of what we talked about, was how I studied finance, and how I just, as I started going working, seeing that, like, sort of the principles that you learn in a classroom or a textbook, how they that's not the way things play out. And that was very disappointing to me, that when I'm like, okay, well, if that system is flawed or misunderstood or too complicated to explain, then that's going to be similar to a lot of the systems. And so that's what again, that's just what I've tried to do, as far as make sense of really things that are hard to understand, and hope for good results with where people can just focus on their family and their lives, and good schools, and just like basics, like you said, good water, good food, good place to live, things like that.
Yeah, and a place for kids to play. Well, you are off to I guess a week or so. Are you going to be gone?
A little bit longer than a week.
All right. Well, well-deserved vacation for you, and I hope you have a wonderful time at the beach. And I hope Bo has a wonderful time also at the beach.
You will.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much once again, David. I'll look forward to seeing you when you get back. And I'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock right here at McDuff Lives 3 with Minefields tomorrow morning. So I'll see you then. Good night, everybody. Thank you, David. Thanks, everyone in the chat. All right. Thank you.